If you notice these 5 signs, keep going. You're on the right path. Who looks outside? Dreams. Who looks inside? Awakes. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like your world is shifting beneath your feet? Like something deep within is changing, but you can't quite explain it? According to Carl Jung, these moments aren't setbacks. They're sacred signs that your soul is awakening and you're closer than ever to your true path. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore 5 powerful signs that signal you're in the midst of a profound transformation. These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. As you watch, reflect on your own journey and share in the comments. Which of these signs have you experienced? Let's grow together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community of awakening souls. 1. The feeling of disconnection is the beginning of awakening. You may find yourself waking up one day and feeling like you're living in a world that no longer fits. You still go through your routines, getting dressed, showing up, making small talk, but something inside you has changed. The laughter doesn't land like it used to. The things that once filled you with passion now feel like obligations. The light in your eyes feels dimmer, and you wonder if you've lost something essential along the way. Carl Jung would say, this is not collapse. It's the beginning of individuation, a term he used to describe the process of becoming who you truly are. This inner disconnect is not a sign of failure, but a sacred signal. The soul is no longer willing to participate in a life that doesn't reflect its truth. You're not broken. You're shedding layers of false identity that no longer serve the man you are becoming. As the days pass, a restless energy begins to stir within you. You want to move, to change, to escape something, but you don't yet know what. It's as if you're caught between the man you've always been and the one you're slowly becoming. This liminal space is uncomfortable, filled with uncertainty and doubt. And yet, it is deeply meaningful. Jung understood this stage as a necessary tension between the conscious and unconscious self, a crucible of transformation. Your soul is agitated not because you've lost your way, but because it's guiding you toward something greater, something more aligned. You're being asked to trust the unknown, to honor the instinct that says, there's more to life than this. That discomfort is sacred. It's the friction that carves the path forward. Alongside the restlessness comes a wave of questions that hit you when the world is quiet. What am I doing this for? Why do I feel so empty when I've achieved so much? Is this all there is? These aren't random thoughts. They're the soul demanding to be heard. When outer success fails to satisfy, it's because the inner world has been neglected. Jung believed that the self, the totality of the psyche, calls out through these existential aches, urging you to reconnect with your essence. It's not about adding more to your life, but about peeling back the layers until only the truth remains. You begin to crave meaning over momentum, depth over distraction, and alignment over approval. This longing is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the soul's rebellion against a life lived on the surface. As this awakening deepens, your tolerance for anything false begins to erode. Shallow conversations, performative relationships, and empty pursuits become unbearable. You can no longer pretend to care about what doesn't nourish your spirit. This shift is both painful and liberating. You may lose connections, but you gain clarity. Jung saw this as a sign of psychological maturity, the ability to stand alone in your truth. even if it costs you comfort or companionship. Your energy becomes sacred, your time becomes intentional, and your presence becomes powerful. The soul no longer allows you to betray yourself for the sake of fitting in. And so, you begin to protect your peace, not out of pride, but out of necessity. Then comes the final sign, an unexpected calm amidst the chaos. Though you still don't have all the answers, though the road ahead is foggy, there is a quiet steadiness within you. You stop chasing. You stop performing. You begin to trust. There is no sudden revelation, no trumpet from the heavens. Instead, there is stillness, and in that stillness, you realize that you are no longer who you were. You're not seeking to control life anymore. You're learning to flow with it. Jung believed that true wholeness comes not from perfection, but from integration, honoring both light and shadow, clarity and confusion. You're not trying to be someone else. You're finally becoming yourself. This is what it means when the soul awakens. It doesn't shout. It shifts. It quiets. And in that silence, you begin to hear the truth that's been waiting for you all along. Have you ever felt disconnected from everything you once loved? If this message resonates with your soul, share your experience in the comments so others know they're not alone. And if you're just beginning to sense this shift, type "I'm waking up" below to honor the start of your awakening. 2. Misalignment, restlessness, and emptiness are spiritual signals. Restlessness, emotional detachment, and that quiet emptiness you carry. These are not signs that you failed. They are spiritual signals that the life you once built no longer fits the soul you are becoming. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He believed that our discomfort is not always a breakdown, but often a breakthrough in disguise. You may still wake up, go to work, smile through conversations, and fulfill your obligations, but somewhere inside, you've changed. The thrill that once lit you up has faded. The routine that once gave you structure now feels like a cage. And what once felt like purpose now feels like performance. That numbness, that questioning, that strange silence between your actions and your feelings, it's not apathy. It's your soul trying to tell you that it's time to evolve. There comes a point in every person's journey where the outer world no longer mirrors the inner world. You feel like you're drifting, not because you're lost, but because your deeper self is surfacing. The values you used to chase no longer excite you. The people you used to impress no longer matter. And the identity you clung to begins to dissolve. It can feel like you're falling apart, but Carl Jung would say, this is the beginning of wholeness. The soul doesn't shout. It whispers through misalignment. It speaks in the quiet urge to withdraw, to reflect, to simplify. When nothing on the outside satisfies you anymore, that's a signal to go inward. You're not meant to go back to the old version of yourself. You're meant to rise into a fuller, truer version, one that can no longer be contained by the mask you once wore. Think of the man who spent years building his identity around his achievements, only to wake up one morning and feel utterly numb. He had the job, the status, the material security, but something essential was missing. He started turning down invitations, craving solitude over socialization. He found himself uninterested in conversations that once excited him. He stopped pretending. At first, he thought he was depressed, but over time, he realized he was being called into something deeper. He began to read Carl Jung. He began to write, meditate, sit in silence. And from that silence, clarity began to emerge. Not the kind of clarity that tells you what to do next, but the kind that reminds you of who you are. He wasn't broken. He was awakened. The mask was melting, and the soul was stepping forward. This is the sacred discomfort Jung spoke of, not a punishment, but an initiation. When you feel emotionally disconnected from everything, it's not because you've stopped caring. It's because you're being prepared to care more deeply, more authentically, for what actually aligns with your soul. When you feel restless, it's because your soul is trying to stretch beyond the limits of the life you've outgrown. And when you question everything, it's because you're finally breaking free from inherited beliefs, borrowed dreams, and the silent pressure to live a life that was never truly yours. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path toward becoming whole, unique, integrated. It's messy, it's unsettling, but it's sacred. And every ache you feel along the way is a message, not from your mind, but from your soul. So don't rush to fix what feels off. Don't silence the restlessness. Don't numb the emptiness. Sit with it. Let it unravel you. Let it guide you. Because what's falling apart is not your life. It's your false identity. What's dissolving is not your purpose. It's the illusion that you ever needed to be anything other than your truest self. The misalignment, the unease, the longing for something more. These are not flaws in your path. They are confirmations that you're getting closer to it, closer to your truth, closer to your alignment, closer to your soul. And that's the lesson. When the life you've built begins to feel too small, it's because your soul is growing bigger. When your outer world no longer fits, it's time to build a new one from the inside out. Let the discomfort lead you. Let Carl Jung's wisdom remind you that this is not the end. It's the beginning of everything that truly matters. 3. You are not breaking down. You're breaking open. When everything you once identified with begins to dissolve, when your emotions feel too heavy to carry, when confusion shadows your thoughts, when your sense of self no longer fits like it used to. This is not the end of your stability. It is the beginning of your spiritual transformation. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. What you are feeling is the ego losing its grip. The constructed version of you that was built to survive slowly unraveling so the authentic self, the soul, can finally breathe. This transition does not announce itself with clarity or comfort. Instead, it arrives as a storm that strips away the illusions you've clung to, a sacred disorientation that brings you to your knees, not in defeat, but in surrender to something deeper. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what's happening now. The unconscious parts of you, the silenced emotions, the neglected dreams, the forgotten truths are rising, not to punish you, but to liberate you. The grief you feel for your old self is not only natural, but necessary. That identity was shaped by fear, expectations, roles you were told to play, and wounds you never got the chance to heal. Now, the spiritual process is asking you to say goodbye to what no longer resonates, even if that means walking away from the comfort of who you used to be. It may feel like a collapse, but it's more like a shedding, a peeling away of false layers so that the soul can shine through. Think of a snake outgrowing its skin, or a caterpillar dissolving into a cocoon that looks like destruction is actually creation. The breakdown is the breakthrough. It's the sacred chaos before clarity. Every tear, every restless night, every moment of emptiness is a form of spiritual initiation. And just because others can't see it doesn't make it less real. They may mistake your stillness for apathy, your questions for confusion, your solitude for loneliness, but you are on a higher path now, one that requires you to trust what you feel more than what you see. Even in your confusion, even in your exhaustion, you are not lost. You are being recalibrated. The signs are subtle, but they are there. You may find yourself uninterested in old habits, disconnected from surface-level conversations, or suddenly drawn to silence, nature, or spiritual teachings. These are not coincidences. They are signals that your soul is awakening. The mind may resist, label these changes as irrational, but the heart knows. The heart whispers truths that the intellect cannot grasp. And as Jung taught, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. You are being called inward, not to escape life, but to live it from a place of truth. That truth will cost you your old life, but it will give you a new one built on alignment, depth, and peace. This is a sacred rite of passage, and though you may feel alone in it, you are not. The path of spiritual awakening is walked in silence, in solitude, but never in isolation. Others have come before you. Others walk beside you. And even now, the universe is conspiring on your behalf to remove everything that stands between you and your soul. So if your world feels like it's crumbling, let it. If your identity feels like it's dissolving, bless it. If your emotions feel overwhelming, listen to them. They are not signs of weakness. They are signs of truth finally surfacing. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. And what is emerging from that opening is not a ruined version of yourself, but the real you whole, awake and free. If this message spoke to your soul, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of deep transformation. Type in the comments, I welcome the rise of my authentic self. 4. Slowing down and listening to intuition is a new way forward. There comes a point in every man's journey when the external world begins to lose its grip, and what once felt like achievement now feels like noise. The routines that used to give you structure begin to feel like cages. The titles, the deadlines, the trophies, none of it feeds your soul the way it once did. You find yourself moving more slowly, not because you're weak, but because something sacred within you is asking to be heard. That quiet sadness you can't quite name, that pause before saying yes to things you used to enjoy, that sudden urge to retreat from the noise. It's not burnout. It's not a failure. It's the beginning of an inner revolution. Carl Jung called it the individuation process, the return of the self to its authentic wholeness, where the soul no longer wants to perform a role, but demands truth. Transformation doesn't erupt with thunder. It begins with whispers, with subtle inner tremors that ripple outward. And if you're noticing them, you're already closer than you realize to the real you beneath the layers. The first sign is this unexplained heaviness, an odd melancholy that rises not from any single event, but from the quiet awareness that what you've built no longer aligns with what you deeply crave. It's the soul grieving its own neglect. That sadness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the emotional echo of years spent living according to expectations instead of essence. And instead of numbing it, running from it, or trying to analyze it. The real power lies in sitting with it, letting it speak. Because within that ache is the map back to yourself, to what is real, holy, and lasting. When you stop dismissing your sadness and start honoring it, you begin to remember the man you were before the world told you who to be. Next comes the call to trust your intuition, not the logical spreadsheet version of your mind, but the deep, embodied knowing that doesn't need words to be true. You begin making decisions that seem irrational to others, but feel deeply right. You walk away from a job, a marriage, a place, not because you're impulsive, but because the part of you that's tired of faking it has finally taken the wheel. Jung believed the unconscious reveals itself through symbols, dreams, and feelings, not through rational explanation. When your body tightens around something, pay attention. When it feels expansive around something else, lean in. Your intuition is not a luxury. It is the voice of your soul speaking in the only language it knows. Energy, resonance, truth. And when you stop needing to explain your decisions, when you no longer need permission to change, that's when you know the shift is real. As this transformation unfolds, you find yourself letting go of explanations. You stop justifying your quietness, your new boundaries, your need for solitude. You stop apologizing for wanting peace more than performance. You simply know, deep in your bones, that this is your path. That stillness is not laziness, it is recalibration. That withdrawal is not weakness, it is restoration. And though others may question you, doubt you, even pity you, you begin to realize that you don't need them to understand. This is not their journey, it's yours. The soul doesn't owe anyone an explanation. And then there are the subtle realignments, the way your life begins to reconfigure itself without force. Anna, once a social butterfly, found herself craving silence, and in that silence, rediscovered her writer's voice. Michael, successful by every external metric, began waking up in the middle of the night, feeling hollow, and within months, left his corporate job and stepped into a life that actually felt alive. Donna pulled back from her usual social calendar, not out of fear, but because her energy no longer tolerated noise. Elena found herself drawn to the forest, and in the stillness of the trees, she began to hear the whispers of her own wisdom. Jordan stopped over explaining, stopped over apologizing, and in doing so, found a new kind of freedom. These are not dramatic breakdowns. They are sacred breakthroughs. They are signs that the soul is reorganizing your reality from the inside out. So if you're in that space, unsure, quiet, disconnected from the life you once knew, don't rush to fix it. Don't try to turn back. This is not the end. It's the crossing, the pause, the passage. It's where men become who they truly are, not by force, but by listening. Listening to the silence, listening to the ache, listening to the truth that can no longer be ignored. Because when the soul begins to speak, the wise man listens, and that listening becomes the new way forward. 5. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. You no longer need to perform, impress, or chase after the kind of validation that never truly nourished you. The moment you realize this is the moment something powerful begins to shift within you. According to Carl Jung, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that truth speaks louder now than ever before. You've spent years living according to external measurements of success, checking off the boxes, meeting expectations, smiling when you wanted to cry, staying quiet when your spirit was screaming to be heard. But now, without announcement, your soul has stepped forward, gently pulling you out of the noise and into something quieter, more sacred. You may look around and see that nothing has changed on the surface. You still show up to work, you still talk to friends, but inside, the performance is over. And though this unraveling may feel unsettling, it is not chaos. It is clarity. This is not you falling apart. This is your truth breaking through. This is the sacred moment when you stop living to be seen and start living to be real. You begin to recognize that the urgency to prove yourself was never yours. It was a survival pattern, a script written by fear, trauma, culture, or legacy. And now, that script feels too small. You can't pretend anymore. The roles you once played so convincingly begin to dissolve, not with violence, but with grace. The masks fall, not because you're broken, but because you're finally becoming whole. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of reconciling the fragments of your identity into one authentic, integrated being. And it doesn't come with applause or instruction. It often starts in silence, in the restless, late-night moments when you question everything, or in the stillness of a morning when you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. The world tells you to keep climbing, to keep achieving, to be who you've always been. But your soul whispers something different. It says, simplify, realign, return. Choose what feels true, even if it makes no sense to anyone else. That's the beginning of real freedom. The kind that comes not from what you accumulate, but from what you release. You meet a man who, by every standard, is successful, wealthy, respected, accomplished. But one day, in the quiet of his home, he breaks down. Not from exhaustion, but from emptiness. Because he realizes he built an empire that doesn't reflect his essence. He had everything, yet he couldn't feel anything. And in that collapse, he found his calling not to do more, but to become more of who he really is. That's not failure. That's transformation. And perhaps you're in a similar place. You're starting to choose differently now. You say no when your heart says no. You distance yourself from what drains you. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't even trying to understand you. You begin to trust the pull inside that says, this way, even if the path is unclear. And every time you honor that inner pull, you strengthen the voice of your soul. You create space for something new to emerge, not another identity, but your original one, the one buried under years of conditioning. The beauty of this process is that it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. You start to feel a quiet confidence, not because the world is affirming you, but because you've started affirming yourself. You know what feels right. You know when something is off. You trust that inner knowing more than the applause or approval of others. And the more you live from that place, the more your life begins to align, not instantly, not without resistance, but with increasing resonance. Your task is no longer to seek clarity outside of yourself. It's to return, again and again, to what feels deeply real. To choose it, honor it, embody it, even when it costs you comfort, even when it challenges your old identity. Because what you're building now isn't a brand. It's a soul-aligned life. And that kind of life cannot be faked, rushed, or borrowed. It must be lived from the inside out, breath by breath, decision by decision. Carl Jung reminds us, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside awakens. And that awakening, however disorienting at first, is the beginning of your liberation. You are not collapsing. You are being recalibrated, not disappearing, but reappearing as your truest self. So don't run from the unraveling. Don't fight the silence. Don't apologize for choosing yourself. Let the old fall away, not in bitterness, but in reverence. Because in the ashes of what no longer serves you, your real life is beginning to rise. To affirm your commitment to becoming your truest self, declare it now. Comment below, "I choose what resonates with my soul," to honor your sacred journey and encourage others to do the same. And if this message speaks to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a reminder of who you truly are. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the subtle yet powerful signs that your soul is evolving and aligning with its true path. Remember, transformation often begins quietly, and what feels uncertain may actually be a sign that you're closer than ever to your breakthrough. Keep going. You're not lost. You're awakening. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of insight and spiritual growth in our upcoming videos. Your journey matters. Stay connected. Stay inspired. The universe's final test, right before you get everything you prayed for. When the soul is ready, everything conspires to help it grow. This powerful truth reminds us that the moments right before our greatest breakthroughs often feel like chaos. But what if the pain, confusion, and delays aren't setbacks, but final spiritual tests? In today's video on Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore Carl Jung's profound insights into the hidden trials that appear just before everything you've prayed for begins to manifest. These aren't punishments, they're preparation. So as you watch, ask yourself, what lesson is life trying to teach me right now? If this resonates with your journey, don't forget to comment below. Have you ever faced a moment that broke you, only to later realize it was shaping you? Share your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe to join us on the path of awakening. 1. Collapse is a sacred invitation, not a breakdown. When everything in your life begins to fall apart, when relationships dissolve, careers shift, long-held plans collapse, and the certainty you once clung to disappears, it's easy to assume something has gone wrong. But this isn't a punishment, and it's not the end. It is a divine realignment, a sacred moment where your soul is being prepared for something greater than you've known. The universe is not trying to break you. It's trying to reveal you. It is peeling away what no longer serves your becoming, removing the identities, attachments, and illusions that have been standing in the way of your deeper truth. This unraveling is not destruction, it's initiation. The old structures, the outdated roles, the persona you've maintained, they cannot hold the magnitude of who you are becoming, so they must be dismantled. This is the final test before the manifestation, and it is not a test of effort, but of surrender. Can you release control? Can you let go of the life you thought you were supposed to have and trust that something your soul has always known is emerging? Most men resist this process. The ego clings. It wants answers, guarantees, and timelines. But the soul doesn't speak that language. The soul speaks in symbols, silence, and synchronicity. And if you can stay long enough in the discomfort, if you can resist the urge to numb, escape, or rebuild too quickly, you will hear something deeper, your true self calling you forward. The pain you feel in this collapse is not evidence of failure. It is the fire that purifies. Like gold refined in heat, you are being stripped of what is false so that what is eternal can shine. The ache in your chest, the grief of loss, the confusion of direction, these are signs that something sacred is shifting. And though the mind will try to interpret it as chaos, the soul understands it as design. This collapse is not random. It is the universe preparing you to carry the weight of the blessings you've prayed for. What's falling away is not meant to stay, and what's coming will not arrive until you become the version of yourself who is ready to receive it without self-sabotage, without fear, and without shrinking. This test is about becoming empty enough to be filled with the truth. It's about stepping out of survival mode and into sacred trust. It's about letting go of old identities that were built on performance, approval, or pain, and remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. In this space of unknowing, your soul is remembering. It is aligning with a life that is more honest, more powerful, and more deeply yours. You are not being rejected by life. You are being redirected by it. The collapse is the turning point, the sacred gateway into the becoming your soul has been waiting for. And if you can face it, walk through it, and trust what it's teaching you, you won't just manifest a new life. You will become someone who can hold it with grace, strength, and purpose. Are you ready to see your collapse as a sacred invitation, not a breakdown? If so, comment below. I embrace the shift to affirm your trust in the divine realignment unfolding in your life. 2. The final test comes before the breakthrough. Right before everything you've ever prayed for arrives, life has a way of sending you a familiar echo from your past. It's subtle at first, when an old habit resurfaces, a person you once let go suddenly reaches out, or a thought pattern you thought you'd buried quietly creeps back in. This isn't a coincidence. It's not regression. It's the final test before your breakthrough, and it asks one sacred question: have you really changed? Carl Jung taught that what remains unconscious continues to control your life until you confront it, and this is that moment. The universe isn't trying to punish you, it's holding up a mirror. Because the version of you that's aligned with your prayers can't coexist with the parts of you that once settled, self-abandoned, or played small. And so, you're faced with a decision not just in thought, but in action. Will you return to what once broke you, or will you rise into who you've become? James had spent years on his healing. He walked away from toxic cycles, invested in his spiritual growth, practiced stillness, forgiveness, and truth. And just when everything was falling into place, his dream job, a fresh start, his ex appeared. Not by accident, but like a ghost from an old timeline asking for entry. She said everything he once wanted to hear. But James, with all the tools he had cultivated, paused. He didn't respond from his wounds. He responded from his wisdom. And when he chose alignment over nostalgia, he didn't just pass a test, he graduated from a version of himself that no longer existed. Hours later, he received the offer he'd been working toward for years. That's how the final test works. It shows up right before your expansion, disguised as what once made you feel small, not to punish you, but to give you the chance to show the universe who you are now. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, reject, or disown. This test is your shadow in motion. It's not the enemy, it's the teacher. And it's asking if you've learned to respond from the soul, not the wound. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. These spiritual checkpoints aren't loud or dramatic. They are quiet moments when you must choose differently, not to prove something to others, but to yourself, to the part of your soul that remembers who you came here to be. You may feel doubt, fear, or even loneliness in that moment. But if you hold the line, if you don't chase the old story, if you walk forward with clarity instead of craving what meets you on the other side, will not only match your growth, it will honor your becoming. This isn't about resisting temptation. It's about recognizing alignment. It's about knowing that comfort can be a trap, that the familiar isn't always safe, and that the soul doesn't evolve through ease, but through choice. The final test doesn't come to question your worth. It comes to confirm your readiness. So when the past knocks, pause, breathe, and remember, this is the moment that counts. Not because the test is hard, but because your soul has worked too long to be dragged back into what it already outgrew. Choose the future that matches your healing, because your manifestation isn't waiting on luck. It's waiting on your alignment. 3. Transformation requires surrender, not strength. You're not being asked to be perfect, only to be real. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is not about proving your strength, but about allowing your truth. It's not about how much you can endure through force, but how willing you are to surrender what no longer serves your soul. This is the moment when you stop performing for the world and begin aligning with the deeper voice within you. The universe isn't testing your productivity, it's testing your presence. Can you stay centered when the outer world unravels? Can you trust the unseen when the visible falls apart? Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now is the moment your unconscious patterns rise to be seen, not to shame you, but to set you free. This is not a punishment. It's an invitation to rise in spiritual alignment. When your identity begins to dissolve, when the path you once trusted becomes foggy, and when your relationships shift in ways you can't control, this is not failure. This is initiation. The old life wasn't wrong. It was just too small for the truth that is now emerging through you. You are being asked to let go of the masks that kept you accepted but disconnected from your soul. Spiritual transformation isn't clean and polished. It's messy, honest, and raw. It looks like letting go of plans, of timelines, of needing to be understood. It looks like saying, I don't know who I am anymore, and realizing that's the most honest prayer your soul could speak. It looks like silence, like grief, like freedom disguised as loss. You don't need to force your way through this. You need to soften, to allow, to breathe. The fire you feel is not punishment. It is purification. The collapse you fear is not destruction. It's sacred restructuring. This test is asking one question. Will you be real, even when it costs you comfort? Will you choose what aligns, even when it breaks what's familiar? Will you trust your soul's knowing over your ego's fear? Most people can't sit in this space. They rush to fix, to rebuild, to numb. But this test isn't passed by fixing, it's passed by feeling. It's about how gently you can hold yourself in the in-between. It's about whether you can stand in the unknown without needing to escape. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And what lies within you now is truth waiting to be embodied." You're not being called to become stronger. You're being called to become more whole, to become spiritually honest, to become free. Let the unraveling happen. Let what no longer fits fall away. Let the false identities burn, not because you're broken, but because your soul is becoming too powerful to live inside a lie. When the universe rearranges your life, it's not against you. It's for your remembrance. What you once called endings are actually the openings your soul has been praying for. And once you pass through this final test, not by striving, but by surrendering, you won't have to chase what's meant for you. You'll simply become the person who magnetizes it. Because when you choose spiritual alignment over performance, when you trust presence over perfection, and when you embody who you really are rather than who the world taught you to be, everything meant for your soul begins to arrive, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Stay connected with our spiritual community by subscribing to our channel. Here, we share powerful insights to help you surrender, align, and walk in your truth. Remember, transformation doesn't demand perfection, only your presence and trust. You are exactly where you need to be. 4. Silence is the soul's preparation. After the fire has stripped you bare, and the collapse has dismantled every illusion you once clung to, what remains is silence, not a soft silence, but a raw, empty stillness that unnerves the ego and tests every ounce of your faith. This silence is not punishment. It is the soul's preparation, a sacred chrysalis where your former self cannot follow, and your deeper self begins to stir. You are not lifeless here. You are shedding. You are not broken. You are being remade. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." And in this stillness, where there is nothing left to distract or define you, you are forced to look inward. No titles, no roles, no applause, just you, your breath, and the truth that was buried under all the noise. The silence strips you of everything that cannot withstand truth. The man you thought you had to be dies here, so the man your soul came to this world to become can finally rise. This is the final test before the breakthrough, and it requires a level of surrender most never reach. When there is no movement, no progress, and nothing seems to respond to your effort, your mind will panic. It will beg you to hustle, to fix, to force something into motion. But your soul whispers something different. It says, "Be still. Let go. I am working." In the stillness, the masks begin to fall off, not just the ones you wear for others, but the ones you wear for yourself. The achiever, the provider, the strong one, the rescuer. And when those masks fall, what's left is vulnerable, unpolished, and breathtakingly real. You begin to realize how much of your life was built on survival, not soul. You remember the parts of you that were never given permission to exist. And it is in this sacred space where the true alchemy begins, not through effort, but through presence. There is a deeper intelligence guiding this pause, a divine rhythm that refuses to let you step into the next season carrying the weight of the last. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are in divine suspension, where the soul aligns you not with what you want, but with what you were born for. That alignment demands silence because the voice of the soul is not loud. It is subtle, clear, and firm. Only in the absence of external stimulation can you hear the frequency of your own becoming. In this stage, what used to soothe you no longer works. The habits that once numbed you begin to disgust you. You crave depth, truth, and connection not as luxury, but as necessity. The soul grows louder in the quiet, and what once felt like isolation now reveals itself as initiation. The silence teaches you how to sit with uncertainty without needing to fix it, how to honor your intuition without needing proof, how to trust that what's unfolding in the unseen is just as real, if not more, than anything the eyes can confirm. You learn to rest, not because you are lazy, but because your energy is sacred. You learn to wait, not because you are stuck, but because timing is protection. And you learn to listen, not with ears, but with presence. The man who can endure the silence without self-abandonment becomes a force of truth in a world drowning in noise. He does not need to be validated. He does not chase applause. He walks in resonance with his soul. And when he finally emerges from this cocoon of quiet, he does not return as he was. He rises as who he truly is. 5. The universe responds to frequency, not just words. What you speak with your mouth must match the energy you carry within. You may say you want peace, success, love, or abundance, but if your energy is still tied to fear, lack, resentment, or unworthiness, the universe will respond to that, not your words. Carl Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That fate is not just some distant mystery. It's unfolding in the subtle, invisible signals you send through your thoughts, emotions, and daily choices. Saying you want change is not enough if your frequency still vibrates with the energy of the past. The universe isn't fooled by declarations. It listens to the truth of your vibration. Every time you repeat an old choice that contradicts your desires, you reinforce a signal that says you're not ready. You block the very blessings you pray for, not because you're being punished, but because your energy is out of sync with your intention. Take a look around in your own life. How often have you asked for a healthy relationship, yet continued to chase people who reflect your unresolved wounds? How many times have you spoken of wanting to level up, while your habits keep pulling you back into comfort zones of mediocrity? This is the hidden test Carl Jung pointed to: the spiritual challenge of choosing what you say you want in the silence of your being, not just in the noise of your words. Embodying a new truth doesn't happen through affirmation alone. It happens when you align your behavior, thoughts, and emotions with that truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. A man can say he wants freedom, but keeps choosing fear. A woman can say she wants love, but continues settling for less. Words without energy behind them are just noise. The moment you align your energy with what you truly want, without contradiction, without double signals, that's when the shift begins. Not because the universe finally heard you, but because you finally became a match to what you asked for. Manifestation is not magic. It's energetic alignment. You don't attract what you beg for. You attract what you believe in, what you prepare for, and what you show up for. And this is where Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom strikes a deep chord. When the unconscious becomes conscious, And when your soul stops negotiating with old patterns, you finally step into the version of yourself who no longer blocks what's already yours. So when life starts shaking, when things fall apart, when old paths crumble, that's not rejection. That's refinement. That's your final test. Will you still hold on to what feels familiar but keeps you stuck? Or will you rise to the vibration of who you are becoming? Because the universe doesn't grant by request, it responds by frequency. If this message resonated with your spirit, leave a comment of alignment. I choose to match my energy with what I truly desire. I trust the universe is responding to my highest vibration. 6. Temptation will masquerade as comfort. Right before everything aligns in your favor, life sends one last spiritual test, not to defeat you, but to ask you if you're truly ready. The trick is, it won't look like a test at all. It will come dressed as comfort. It will sound like a second chance, feel like relief, and taste like nostalgia. An old relationship you thought you healed from might text you out of nowhere, sounding sweeter, softer, more apologetic. A job you once outgrew might suddenly offer better pay or easier hours. Habits you buried might rise up, cloaked in the promise of release from stress. But none of these things are rewards. They are the echo of an old version of you, sent to see if you'll return to what once broke you just because it feels familiar. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in warmth, and the most powerful temptations are the ones that whisper, "This time, it will be different." Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is that moment, the one where your unconscious patterns come dressed as opportunities. The test isn't about resisting with rage, but about choosing with wisdom. You don't need to hate the past to walk away from it. You just need to love your future more. Spiritual growth is proven not when life is peaceful, but when you are offered what you once craved and still choose what you now deserve. Life loops back like a spiral, not to punish you, but to check your alignment. The same lesson will revisit in a new disguise, not to trick you, but to see if you've truly evolved. And here's where your soul speaks loudest, not in your words, but in your choices. Will you trade temporary comfort for permanent clarity? Will you surrender the illusion of ease to protect your peace? When the old knocks, it won't bang. It'll knock gently, like a friend you once loved, and you'll feel the pull. But that's your sign. If it stirs your confusion more than your calm, it's not meant for who you are now. The final spiritual test is quiet, subtle, and sacred. It's the moment you stop choosing what flatters your wounds and start choosing what feeds your soul. The moment you say no, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the life you're building. You aren't just closing a door, you're casting a spiritual vote. And every time you honor who you've become over who you used to be, the universe responds. You stop recycling pain and start manifesting purpose. Because true transformation doesn't shout, it whispers, "Choose again. This time for real." 7. Isolation is a sign of elevation. When everything begins to fall away from your friendships, your daily habits, even the relationships that once grounded you, it's not a sign that you're losing yourself, but that your soul is being elevated to a new level of truth. This isolation is not a punishment. It's spiritual protection, a divine recalibration of your energy so that you can align with the man you are destined to become. Carl Jung once said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that becoming often demands solitude. When you're in this sacred transition, the universe starts removing what can no longer come with you. Old patterns collapse. Shallow connections vanish. Even people who once loved you may now look at you with confusion. That's because your soul is vibrating at a frequency they can't yet hear. In this silence, your nervous system is healing. Your spirit is shedding what's false. Your emotions are being refined not for survival, but for presence, discernment, and spiritual integrity. It feels like death because it is a death of everything that once defined you from the outside in. You're not being asked to prove your worth anymore. You're being asked to embody it. And to do that, you must sit with yourself long enough to hear the voice within the voice that no longer needs applause to feel whole. This is where your real power is born, not through force, but through surrender. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is whether you can remain faithful in the void, whether you can trust the silence, whether you can stay rooted even when nothing around you blooms. The men who emerge from this are not the ones who fought their isolation. They are the ones who accepted it, honored it, and grew within it. Because just like the seed that breaks open in darkness, you are being prepared to rise not as who you were, but as who you truly are. The solitude is the soul's sanctuary. The emptiness is full of divine instruction. The disconnection is the space in which your new self is forming. And when the time is right, everything meant for you will return not to the version of you that was, but to the man you've become. Comment below. I trust the isolation is making me stronger. If you're ready to rise higher through your spiritual elevation. 8. You're becoming the one who can hold what you asked for. You are not being denied your desires. You are being prepared to become the one who can hold them with depth, strength, and spiritual maturity. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is not about having the right strategy or doing the right rituals. It's about becoming the vessel strong enough to carry the blessing without breaking under its weight. It's about alignment over urgency, identity over impulse, and integrity over instant gratification. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This test is where the unconscious patterns that once sabotaged your progress are brought to light, not to shame you, but to liberate you. You are being invited to see that the delay is not a denial. It is divine precision, shaping you to become the version of yourself who doesn't just touch the life they asked for, but sustains it with clarity and wholeness. You may feel like you're in limbo, caught between the person you were and the life you've been envisioning. But this in-between space is sacred. It's where the rewiring happens. It's where the old habits, the outdated beliefs, and the subtle ways you used to shrink are brought into your awareness. Not because you're broken, but because your soul is maturing into someone who can live in the manifestation, not just witness it. I once knew a man who dreamed of building a business that would impact lives. But every time he tried, something fell apart. It took him years to realize that it wasn't the business that kept failing. It was his mindset that wasn't ready to steward something that big. The universe wasn't punishing him. It was protecting the vision until he became a match for it. When he finally stopped obsessing over timing and started refining who he was becoming, the doors open naturally. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that the greatest manifestations come through identity, not desperation. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. This means the real work is not chasing the outcome, but stabilizing the inner world that will support it. If you're still waiting, ask yourself, can you hold the love you asked for without projecting your wounds? Can you hold success without collapsing under pressure? Can you hold wealth without reverting to scarcity? These aren't punishments. These are preparatory questions that determine if you're ready not just to receive, but to hold what you prayed for. Carl Jung's message was never about chasing perfection. It was about becoming integrated, whole, and self-aware. And that is the final test, one that asks, not, are you worthy of it? But are you finally ready to live it without losing yourself? Because when your soul becomes aligned, what you asked for can no longer be withheld. It recognizes you as its rightful home. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a message meant for your growth. If you're becoming the version of yourself who can hold the life you prayed for, type in the comments, I am ready to receive what I asked for. And so, if you find yourself in a moment where everything feels uncertain, where life seems to be falling apart just before it all comes together, remember, this may be the final test. A sacred threshold where the universe asks not for your perfection, but for your trust. As Carl Jung reminded us, the deeper truths often emerge not from clarity, but from chaos. If this message spoke to your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful insight on your path to transformation. Your journey is sacred, and it's just beginning.